So many of you have reached out asking for help with finding a pagan path. And this choice can definitely be confusing. There are so many different pagan paths out there that you could follow. And before I should even start, I should probably say that you don't necessarily have to follow one specific path. You could be more of an eclectic pagan and pull in pieces from a variety of different paths. Though if you do want to follow one specific path, there are a few things to consider when making this choice. While there are many different paths out there, today I am going to introduce you to two of the most popular ones to see if either of these paths might be a good fit for you. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start with Norse paganism, which recently has seen a huge surge in interest, which is super exciting. Modern Norse pagans base their beliefs and their worldview around the Old Norse religion, which developed in the Proto-Norse period, which is around the 1st century CE. This religion primarily flourished in Scandinavia and Iceland, but during the Viking Age, it also spread to other areas as well. That's why when you study a god like Odin, you'll find a lot of variation in spellings of his name and his various attributes. Now, Norse paganism is similar to a lot of other pagan religions in that it has a cosmology with a series of different gods and goddesses. There is an origin story on how the world came into being, and the tree Yggdrasil and the 9 different realms definitely play a large part in this cosmology. So what should you read to see if you connect with this path? Well, unfortunately, very little religious content survives that was actually written by the Norse pagans. However, we do have some very important texts about Norse pagan beliefs that were written down after the area converted to Christianity. If you are starting out with Norse paganism, I recommend reading the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. These sources reveal the Norse pagan cosmology, and they contain the many stories about the gods. Reading these texts should help you decide if you connect with this particular pantheon. I would also recommend reading the Havamal, which is more of a guide on how to live. The Havamal contains wisdom on topics like how to be a good host, or how to build strong friendships, and how to ensure that your legacy is remembered for future generations. This is a great text to help you understand the culture of the Norse pagans and what they valued in society. While you're reading the Havamal, ask yourself if you share these values and if you find the bits of wisdom inspiring. If you do feel inspired by these Norse texts, then it's a pretty good indication that Norse paganism might be a good fit for you. There are two main groups of deities in Norse paganism. You have the Aesir and the Vanir, and you're probably already familiar with many of these deities. The most popular deities in the Aesir are probably Odin, Thor, and Tyr, and some of the more popular deities in the Vanir are Frey and Freya. Along with these deities, you also have the spirits of the land, the ancestral deities, and other beings such as the Norns, the dwarves, and giants. Now, we don't know much about how these gods and spirits were historically worshipped. Though today, the practice of giving offerings such as food and alcohol is one of the main ways that the Norse pagans connect with the gods. So ask yourself how you feel about the practice of giving offerings and if it's something that you would enjoy doing. Community is a big part of Norse paganism, and when reading the Havamal, you'll find many passages about the importance of maintaining friendships and a strong overall community. Most modern Norse pagans likewise seek to form groups and meet regularly so that they can worship the gods together as the ancient Norse pagans would have done. So if you're looking for not just a spiritual path but also a strong community, then Norse paganism might be a good fit for you. So now we're moving on to Celtic paganism, and we need to start with who were the Celts. So the Celts were a collection of tribes that existed primarily in Ireland, Britain, France, and parts of Spain. And since the Celtic world was quite large, there were a lot of variations in spiritual practice. One of the unusual things about modern Celtic paganism is that it usually ties together the culture and the beliefs of two very different time periods. The majority of Celtic paganism is based around the Celtic world, which started to evolve in around 1200 BCE. However, most modern Celtic paganism also tends to incorporate the prehistoric stone circles and mounds such as Stonehenge and Newgrange. This is a bit odd because these structures were made around 3000 BCE and were built by a group of people that were very different from the later Druids and other Celtic peoples. So if you're thinking about becoming a modern Celtic pagan, keep in mind that you're going to be working with a very large time span that features a variety of different cultures. Like Norse paganism, unfortunately, we don't have that much material that was actually written by the Celtic pagans. This is in part because the Celts believed that the oral tradition was more important and sacred. Most of the primary sources we have actually come from the Romans writing about the Celts, so the content is kind of biased and not always reliable. Additionally, there are a lot of sources that were written after the conversion to Christianity, and while these sources are also likely biased, they do provide a lot of valuable information about the Celtic deities. I recommend starting with these Irish and Welsh sagas to get you started. Understanding Celtic deities and cosmology is quite a bit tricky, so if you are considering Celtic paganism, be ready to do quite a bit of research. Many of the popular Celtic deities, such as these, are considered part of the group known as the Tuatha Dé Danann. The Tuatha Dé Danann live in the underworld but still interact with humans, especially in places like the ancient passage tombs, which were considered kind of like a portal to the underworld. They were considered more like a supernatural race of humans that had special powers. However, this could be because most of their stories were written by monks who may have wanted to diminish their status as deities. Another thing to know is that many Celtic gods and goddesses are localized and based around certain sacred sites, so it can be tricky to connect with these deities if you don't happen to live in the region. Additionally, folklore is a large part of modern Celtic paganism, and many believe that the surviving folklore contains traces of Celtic pagan wisdom that survived the conversion to Christianity. For example, the stories about the Fae could be considered a more modernized version of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So if you have a strong affinity for Celtic folklore and fairy lore, then Celtic paganism might be a really good fit for you. Like with Norse paganism, being part of a Celtic pagan community isn't just about the deities or spiritual beliefs. It's important to engage with areas beyond the religion too. So in the case of Celtic paganism, you can also find community by learning other facets of Celtic culture, such as the language, the music, or dance. There is also a large community of modern Druids that is pretty active. The Druids in Celtic times were religious leaders and teachers, and the modern Druid community can be a great place to start if you're looking for someone to teach you the ways of Celtic paganism. So I really hope you enjoyed this introduction to Norse paganism and Celtic paganism. Let me know in the comments if either of these pagan paths resonate with you. And thank you guys so much for watching today. If you're new here, definitely consider subscribing, and I will see you all next week. Bye!